Hi everyone. Okay, so without further ado, I will just start our Instagram live before we end up sleeping late tonight. Okay, so as all of you know, according to our post earlier on, for this Instagram live, we will be discussing on strays of overpopulation in Malaysia, and specifically on the approaches in handling this problem and also their effectiveness. So I would like to share on this aspect because I'm sure all of you are interested to know how has it been and then what actually we can do as a Malaysian. So first and foremost, how do we define overpopulation of dogs and cats? The definition for this, or how do I explain this, would be when it reaches to the extent whereby the number of dogs and cats exceeds the capacity of a society to care and provide homes as companion animals. So meaning that on top of the existing pet population that we have, the number which exceeds would end up as a free roamer, to simply put it that way. What could be the causes for overpopulation of strays? For the past decade, many studies have been carried out in Europe, and this particular study, it was carried out in Taiwan, and what they found out was that by neutering household pet, it has profound effect in reducing the overpopulation of companion and shelter animals, which means that if pet owners actually play their part to neuter their pets, which we already discussed in our previous Instagram live or in our previous awareness campaign, which was last month. Neutering can actually help with dealing this overpopulation of strays. So it can be as simple as that. So for pet owners out there, if you're wondering, like, you have been seeing strays all over Malaysia and you're wondering what you can actually do, if you have a pet, the first step is actually to neuter your pet, but always discuss with your vet, further understand what is actually neutering and whether, when or why your pet should be neutered. But you can also refer to our previous post regarding neutering. Whenever there are unsterilized pets, it would lead to accidental or even irresponsible breeding of these pets, which also leads to pet overpopulation. So we would never know how many puppies or kittens there would be in a litter. When there is the problem of pet overpopulation, there would be pet negligence, and also it will lead to pet abandonment. These animals would end up as strays or free roamers. To simply put it, there are actually three ways these unowned pets would lead their life. So it's either they continue as roamers, or we would call them as strays or ferals, which if left unneutered, they would continue to breed, and this would lead to more and more strays or free roamers. Or they would be rescued and relocated or surrendered to a shelter or sanctuary. There might be also homeless animals which would be rescued and also rehomed. So those are happy endings cases. Okay, though we would jump to our main topic today, which are the approaches in handling this stray population. We will be discussing 5 approaches in total for this session. I wouldn't take up your time for too long, so hopefully it will be a sweet and short but informative session. Okay, so the first approach would be TNR, which the passerby has been advocating. So TNRM actually stands for Trap, Neuter, Return or Release and Manage. Some people call it CNVR, which stands for Catch, Neuter, Vaccinate and Return. So I would like to explain a bit more in detail about TNR. The purpose of this approach is actually to humanely and effectively manage free roaming animals. This process involves live trapping, which means we trap them with a humane trap. It's not just any other trap, for example, a rat trap or things like that. No, it's a humane trap, and then we would bring the trapped animals to be neutered in a vet clinic or in a vet hospital, and with their ear being tipped for identification. So this identification is very important because it would avoid repeated trapping and neutering process when the animals are returned to their territory. Okay. On top of that, it would be good if, let's say, these animals can actually be vaccinated to build a herd immunity, and then last step would be return, or if possible, they can be rehomed to a responsible home. So ideally, in TNR, friendly adult or young animals, specifically in our discussion here, it would be stray dogs and cats. The friendly ones would be socialized and also placed for adoption. Whereas the ferals, which are the more aggressive ones, they are not socialized, they avoid human interaction, and also they don't do well in any type of confinement, even with a long duration of time. So these animals, it would be good if we can return them to their territory or their original location, because it would be too stressful for them, and it might be stressful for the caretaker as well. So the goals of TNR, okay, trap, neuter, return, is actually to reduce the free roaming animals population and eventual elimination of this population. So we wouldn't be seeing an immediate reduction or elimination of this population. How eventual or how gradual it is, it might take up to 20 or 30 years to see their effect. As long as that, okay, of course, that is the main goal. The next goal would be to provide better animal welfare to these homeless animals. So I will explain further why TNR is the more preferred approach compared to other approaches. So I wouldn't be insistingly advocating on TNR, but I will let you understand why is it a preferred approach, okay? And also, through TNR, we are actually trying to improve the communities where these strays are found. So it's not just about the animals, it's also about the people living in that area, and the community involved. So everyone's happy, the strays are happy, and the community is happy. TNR also helps to reduce overcrowding of shelters, and also it helps to reduce the killing rate for shelters that accept strays. So why do I mention this is because we have seen cases whereby strays might be causing problems in a community. The easiest way is actually to relocate them. So meaning to catch them and then to relocate them to a shelter or sanctuary. If let's say it is done too often, and it is such an easy way to solve this problem, it will lead to shelter overpopulation as well. So the shelter will be too crowded, there will be too much cost to support them. I wouldn't say killing, because not every shelter practices that, but there might be many problems towards the animals, so in terms of animal welfare and also their health. Okay, just to share with you, there's actually a study being carried out last year which involved 24,000 free roaming cats in a span of 8 years. So it was done in Kentucky, the United States. It's a cat shelter, and they have decided to take on this TNR approach and in that area. And what they found out was actually, in a span of 8 years, the intake of cats into the shelter was reduced by 43%. Furthermore, the euthanasia rate was reduced by 94%, which is a lot, which is a very big number. Okay, so this is why one of the goals of TNR is to reduce the killing rates in shelters. Okay, and lastly, it would be to eliminate nuisance behaviors, which is mainly from public complaints. So we actually see a lot whereby, you know, there will be public or certain neighbor, for example, my neighbor, he or she would be complaining, hey, why are there so many strays or cats around? They are pooping in front of my house, they are causing a lot of problem, they are making a lot of noise. So those can actually be reduced or gradually eliminated through TNR. Okay, so there is this real life example given by our local authority. We asked one of the representatives of the animal control officers. So we asked them, hey, Intie, have you received more calls or less calls, or which means complaints from the public? He actually said the calls that they have been receiving has reduced a lot since TNR program has been carried out. Let's move on to the second approach. I will be sharing more on a comparison between TNR and other approaches after this. So let me just move on to the second approach, which would be what we know better as a Malaysian. So this approach is called trap and kill. Why do I put it as kill? Because it is a more direct way to describe this approach. Some, they would describe it as trap and euthanasia or trap and elimination. So this trap and kill approach has been a predominant approach by animal control agencies or local authorities for the past decades. It focuses on the attempt to eradicate animals from the environment, which means their focus is to get rid of whichever animals they are being given the complaints on. Does it work? Does trap and kill work? I would like to know from all of you. But I would also answer for you. Okay, so based on the current proliferation of strays in our country and also the news that we are seeing on social media, it seems that this method, this trap and kill method, doesn't achieve a long-term reduction of population. So we still see strays almost in every part of our country. Although there are many efforts which has been carried on for the past few years, which is very amazing, but whether this trap and kill actually works for this strays overpopulation, I wouldn't think so. It might be applied for certain cases or certain situations. For example, if let's say this situation involves public health issues, for example, rabies, 疯狗症 in Mandarin, but in terms of controlling the stray population, it's not ideal. Okay, so why trap and kill doesn't work? It's not just in Malaysia, but it's in many parts of the world. So for example, they have actually come up with this sort of concept to explain why this approach doesn't work. So the first reason would be this, we call it a vacuum effect. So this vacuum effect was first documented by a wildlife ecologist called Roger Taber when he was doing his studies on street cats in London in the 1980s. So he was observing what was actually going on when a certain population of cats was being removed from a certain location. So what he found out, once the colony of cats, of street cats, was being removed from a location, from a site, the habitat or the environment was left unchanged, which means human activities were still being carried out. Recently abandoned pets, okay, and also strays from neighboring colonies, they would move into this vacant territory for food and shelter, which means it works like a vacuum. There will be newcomers coming in. And when they come in, reproduction repeats, this cycle repeats, and then this colony would return to its normal size according to the carrying capacity of the environment. So carrying capacity is the density in which the environment can support a certain number of the animals. Okay, the second reason why trap and kill doesn't work is because there will be higher survival rates for the remaining strays and their offspring. So how do we explain this? If let's say we are going with this trap and kill approach, the animal control group, there would be they wouldn't have much information or much time to do a thorough job, because in order to trap all of the members of a certain colony, we would need a very close knowledge of the colony, of the members. We will need training, we will need a lot of patience and dedication. So as we know, animal control groups, they usually work on complaints. So when they receive certain complaint, they have no idea what is going on or what kind of what behavior are these strays having, what are their usual routine or things like that. What they do is they would set the trap, hoping that they are trapping most of the number of animals over there, and then they would leave for the next job. So when that is being carried out, there would definitely be animals that would be left behind. So these animals, they would have less competition for food and shelter in that area. Okay, so with that, they would be having higher survivability. For example, a location which can support 10 animals, now it is only being shared by 2 animals. So of course, they will be having a better life, and they'll be happy and reproduce even more and more rapidly. So the third reason why trap and kill doesn't work, this is very important, and also what we see very commonly in Malaysia. So it's due to the resistance from community, which means that because trap and kill most of the time it would appear to be very inhumane or very cruel to the community or public. So there will be resistance from the community. There will be people or volunteers or animal welfare groups who would be going to the pound. They will be bailing out animals, and the cycles repeat. Or there will be even like a passive kind of resistance from the community, whereby they hide information of that colony. They wouldn't give out much information to the animal control groups so that they are not successful in their trapping operation. So these are the reasons why trap and kill doesn't work. So I would like to share an animation regarding trap and kill. So this animation is actually provided by iCam. So enjoy.
Here we are looking at a hypothetical population of dogs. Similar population dynamic processes will be happening in cat populations too. Some of these dogs are female, and if they are unsterilized, many will breed. Where the number of dogs is at carrying capacity, where there is a limit on the available resources and care, many of these puppies die. But some will survive and grow to become adults, taking the place of those adults that die, and becoming part of the breeding population themselves. This is population turnover, and studies have shown that without intervention, the total number of dogs tends to stay approximately stable, with fluctuations over the years, limited by the resources, care and space available for them to thrive and survive. But if culling is used, this leaves fewer dogs sharing the same resources, and this could support more successful breeding by the remaining females, as their puppies have greater survival, making it successfully to adulthood. Adults may also have improved survival following culling, as they also benefit from reduced competition over resources. So fewer adults will die, meaning those surviving puppies more than replace the adults that have died. And the population size begins to recover from the culling. If culling continues, this becomes a repeated cycle of killing, birth, recovery, and killing again. A lot of lives lost and a lot of money spent on killing dogs.
It's actually a YouTube video, so if you would like to have the link, feel free to comment below or DM us. So after explaining or discussing about TNR and also trap and kill, I would also like to share with you a study carried out also in the US, because they have been carrying out a lot of studies on TNR and their impacts. This journal was actually published in 2009. And this study was being carried out in Texas. Also involved a very long period of time. It took place for 25 years. The purpose of this study is actually to evaluate the effectiveness of TNRM and trap and kill on free roaming animals. So what they found out was actually in order to reduce free roaming population, the treatment rate, which means TNR, would have to carry out for more than 50% of the population. So it means that out of 10 animals, we would need more than 50% or more than 5 animals to be neutered to achieve a reduction in free roaming population for a period of time. So not just that, they also found out that we would have to also prevent immigration of animals, which means that newcomers, either through pet abandonment, or offspring of unsterilized household pets, or strays or free roamers from other territories, we would have to prevent all these immigrations from happening to achieve a reduction in this free roaming population. So which also means that it's not just about TNR volunteers or groups. The responsibility doesn't just fall onto these people. This also has to be shared among the community and also owners, which means that everyone should play their role or play their part. First and foremost, they would have to know that pet abandonment is not the solution to reduce pet overpopulation. And also they would have to also understand the importance of sterilizing or neutering their pets. All these causes or all these effects, then only we can actually achieve a stable population of free roamers in our country or in a certain community. So the third approach would be feeding bans. To simply put, the thought of applying this approach would be whenever we stop feeding and there wouldn't be more strays. So if I don't feed, there won't be strays coming to me. So this is a very common thought among Malaysians, what we realize, especially from the older generations. Yeah. Okay. So this approach, I would say, it's a very irresponsible approach, and also this would increase the suffering of the animals, which is mainly due to starvation. Okay. So feeding bans doesn't resolve the problem of stray overpopulation. It would only be shifting this problem to become someone else's. So it is a very irresponsible and selfish act, I would say that way. And why feeding bans doesn't work? First and foremost, it would be because animals, dogs and cats, especially free roamers, they are actually very territorial, which means that they wouldn't wander far for food. They would be usually remaining in their territory. And also they are very resourceful, which means that if, let's say, we apply feeding bans to a certain area, due to starvation, they might intrude into inhabited spaces, which means they would intrude homes or workplaces, and also they might explore previously unexplored food sources, which might means that they would increase their predation level. The other reason why feeding bans doesn't work, because mainly just now what we discussed was starvation. They would be at risk of diseases. So they would be unhealthy, they will be easily getting diseases from each other or from the environment or things like that. For example, sporotrichosis, which is a fungal disease which can be transmitted among the strays due to the environment. Furthermore, it can actually be zoonotic, which means it can be transmissible to human. This doesn't involve just among the strays. They would involve the community, the people in it, and also they would transmit to other strays or even household pets. Also, feeding bans, it is actually impractical because there will still be people from a community who is caring enough to put out food. So this actually distorts the purpose of the feeding ban. Because of that, there might be increased conflict among the local residents. So people might be fighting over this issue. Why are you feeding the strays? Why can't I feed the strays? This kind of thing. So it will cause a lot of problems. So this is the third approach for strays overpopulation, which doesn't really work. The fourth approach would be rescue or relocation. So rescue or relocation is actually a very common approach that we see, but please keep in mind that it is not a solution to reduce strays population because of the challenges placed ahead. The goal in hoping that all ferals should be rescued and placed in homes, it is very difficult to achieve, to be honest, because there are a high number of strays, but there are very few foster or permanent homes to socialize a feral. So I'm particularly talking about ferals, which are unsocialized animals. In terms of ferals, which are more aggressive strays, it will take a very long time and it needs a lot of resources. If, let's say, your resources is actually limited, it wouldn't be a very practical approach. You would be thinking like, what if a group of strays, they are in danger or they are in hostility? It is the easiest way and also it is the most practical way, but in long term it wouldn't be sustainable because as we know, our shelters, most of them, they are already overcrowded. So by doing so, by taking this easy way, we might add on more problems or more burden to them, which we can actually discuss more on this in our next session about shelters and sanctuaries and the challenges and also their roles in strays control. Okay, moving on to our last approach, it would be doing nothing. So this is actually not really an approach, it is more like an option. It's not a solution, but just to discuss with you, by doing nothing, it is also a very easy way out, which means that we are accepting the status quo and all the problems associated. We are not taking any initiative to do either TNR, trap and kill, rescue or relocate, whichever that we just discussed, which means that we are allowing the population to grow to its carrying capacity of the environment in terms of food and shelter. So what we see most commonly is whenever the carrying capacity is exceeded, that is when a lot of problems set in. So first and foremost, it would be in terms of diseases and also starvation. We advocate a lot on feeding the strays, but we would also like to mention that you can feed the free roamers or the homeless animals, but you have to doing it in a responsible way, which means that you don't cause more problems by that activity. So what are the impacts if we don't do anything about the overpopulation of strays? There would be a high intake of shelters. There would be high euthanasia if, let's say, the shelter is not a no-kill shelter, and it will be highly costly for them. It's also one of the main problems we see a lot on social media, raising funds to support the shelter, especially during this challenging time. So these are the impacts. Is this sustainable? No, I don't think so. Yeah, so other impacts would be in terms of public health and public safety. So we see a lot of complaints about stray dogs attacking a motorcyclist or any passerby. Is it their fault? Is it because they are doing it out of a bad intention? Most of the time, they are being defensive, I would say. So after explaining the 5 different approaches, we would know now that there are actually this approach that is possible to be carried out, which is called TNR. It is more sustainable in terms of controlling the stray population. It is not as effective or significant in short term. Of course, trap and kill is actually a faster way to do that. But in terms of sustainability and also in terms of long-term effects, TNR is still the more humane and effective way in controlling our strays. Feel free to direct message us if you have any question about this issue, or if you have faced any challenges or problems associating with either TNR or feeding. Yeah, so we have actually come to the end of the session. I would like to announce that we are actually giving out a free printable PDF infographics about TNRM. So if you are interested, feel free to direct message us that, I want to start my TNR journey and I would like to get a copy of this TNR to bring more awareness to my community, or I would like to share more to my family and friends. Feel free to direct message us. We are more than happy to share it with you. I would say that's all for this session. Thank you for staying until the end, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.